family. Welcome to the Joyful House on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. It is Sunday, October the 12th, 2025, and we are here to continue our storybook adventure with Anne of Green Gables. We are reading out of book number 4, Anne of Windy Poplars, and today we are going to continue reading under the second year, chapters 5 and chapter 6. So if you're ready, sit back, relax, and let's enjoy this storybook adventure. Chapter 5. Anne did not know that a wistful little Elizabeth was watching out of one of the mansard windows of the evergreens as she drove away from Windy Poplars. And Elizabeth, with tears in her eyes, who felt as if everything that made life worth living had gone out of her life for the time being, and that she was very Lizziest of Lizzies. But when the livery sleigh vanished from her sight around the corner of Spook's Lane, Elizabeth went and knelt down by her bed. "Dear God," she whispered, "I know it isn't any use to ask you for a Merry Christmas for me, because Grandmother and the woman couldn't be merry. But please let my dear Miss Shirley have a merry, merry Christmas and bring her back safe to me when it's over." "Now," said Elizabeth, getting up from her knees, "I've done all that I can." Anne was already tasting Christmas happiness. She fairly sparkled as the train left the station. The ugly streets disappeared past her. She was going home to Green Gables. Out in the open country, the world was all golden white and pale violet, woven here and there with the dark magic of spruces and the leafless delicacies of birches. The low sun behind the bare woods seemed rushing through the trees like a splendid god as the train sped on. Catherine was silent, but did not seem ungracious. "Don't expect me to talk," she had warned Anne curtly. "I won't. I hope you don't think I'm one of those terrible people who make you feel like you have to talk to them all the time. We'll just talk when we feel like it. I admit I'm likely to feel like it's a good part of the time, but you're under no obligation to take any notice of what I'm saying." Davy met them at Bright River with a big two-seated sleigh full of furry robes and a bear hug for Anne. The two girls snuggled down in the back seat. The drive from the station to Green Gables had always been a very pleasant part of Anne's weekends home. She always recalled her first drive home from Bright River with Matthew. That had been in spring, and this was December, but everything along the road kept saying to her, "Do you remember?" The snow crisped under the runners. The music of the bells tinkled through the ranks of tall pointed firs, snow-laden, and the white way of delight had little festoons of stars tangled in the trees. And on the last hill but one they saw the great gulf, white and mystical under the moon, but not yet icebound. "There's just one spot on this road where I always feel suddenly, I'm home," said Anne. "It's the top of the next hill, where we'll see the lights of Green Gables. I'm just thinking of the supper Marilla will have ready for us. I believe I can smell it here. Oh, it's good, good, good to be home again." At Green Gables, every tree in the yard seemed to welcome her back. Every lighted window was beckoning. And how good Marilla's kitchen smelled as they opened the door. There were hugs and exclamations and laughter. Even Catherine seemed somehow no outsider, but one of them. Mrs. Rachel Lynde had set her cherished parlor lamp on the supper table and lighted it. It was really a hideous thing with a hideous red glow, but what a warm, rosy, becoming light it cast over everything. How warm and friendly were the shadows. How pretty Dora was growing, and Davy really seemed almost a man. There was news to tell. Diana had a small daughter. Josie Pye actually had a young man, and Charlie Sloane was said to be engaged. It was all just as exciting as news of Empire could have been. Miss Lynn's new patchwork quilt, just completed, containing 5,000 pieces, was on display and received its meed of praise. "When you come home, Anne," said Davy, "everything just seems to come alive." "Ah, this is how life should be," purred Dora's kitten. "I've always found it hard to resist the lure of moonlight night," said Anne after supper. "How about a snowshoe tramp, Miss Brooke? I think that I've heard that you snowshoe." "Yes, it's the only thing I can do, but I haven't done it for 6 years," said Catherine with a shrug. Anne rooted out her snowshoes from the garret, and Davy shot over to the orchard slope to borrow an old pair of Diana's for Catherine. They went through Lover's Lane, full of lovely tree shadows, and across fields where little fir trees fringed the fences, and through woods which were full of secrets that seemed always on the point of whispering to you, but never did. And through open glades they were like pools of silver. They did not talk or want to talk. It was as if they were afraid to talk for fear of spoiling something beautiful. But Anne had never felt so near Catherine Brooke before. By some magic of its own, the winter night had brought them together. Almost together, but not quite. When they came out to the main road and a sleigh flashed by, bells ringing, laughter tinkling, both girls gave an involuntary sigh. It seemed to both that they were leaving behind a world that had nothing in common with the one that they were returning. A world where time was not, which was young with immortal youth, where souls communed with each other in some medium that needed nothing so crude as words. "It's been wonderful," said Catherine so obviously to herself that Anne made no response. They went down the road and up the long Green Gables lane, but just before they reached the yard gate, they both paused as by a common impulse and stood in silence, leaning against the old mossy fence, and looked at the brooding, motherly old house seen dimly through its veil of trees. How beautiful Green Gables was on a winter night! Below it, the lake of shining waters was locked in ice, patterned around its edges with tree shadows. Silence was everywhere. Save for the staccato clip of a horse trotting over the bridge, Anne smiled to recall how often she had heard that sound as she lay in her gable room and pretended to herself that it was the gallop of fairy horses passing in the night. Suddenly, another sound broke the stillness. "Catherine, why, you're not crying." Somehow it seemed impossible to think of Catherine crying, but she was, and her tears suddenly humanized her. Anne no longer felt afraid of her. "Catherine, dear Catherine, what is the matter? Can I help you?" "Oh, you can't understand," gasped Catherine. "Things have always been made easy for you. You seem to live in a little enchanted circle of beauty and romance. I wonder what delightful discovery I make today. That seems to be your attitude to life, Anne. As for me, I have forgotten how to live. No, I never knew how. I'm like a creature caught in a trap, and I can never get out. And it seems to me that somebody is always poking sticks at me through the bars. And you have more happiness than you know what to do with. Friends everywhere. A lover. Not that I want a lover. I hate men. But if I died tonight, not one living soul would miss me. How would you like to be absolutely friendless in the world?" Catherine's voice broke into another sob. Catherine, you say you like frankness, so I am going to be frank. If you are as friendless as you say, it is your own fault. I've wanted to be friends with you, but you have been all prickles and stings. Oh, I know. How I hated you when you came first, flaunting your circlet of pearls. Catherine, I didn't flaunt it. Oh, I suppose not. That's just my natural hateness, but it seemed to flaunt itself. Not that I envied you and your beau. I've never wanted to be married. I saw enough of that with father and mother. But I hated your being over me when you were younger than I was glad when the Pringles made trouble for you. You seemed to have everything that I hadn't. Charm, friendship, youth. Youth? I have never had anything but starved youth. You know nothing about it. You don't know. You haven't the least idea what it is like to not be wanted by anyone. Anyone. Oh, haven't I? Cried Anne. In a few poignant sentences, she sketched her childhood before coming to Green Gables. I wished I'd have known that, said Catherine. It would have made a difference. To me, you seemed one of the favorites of fortune. I've been eating my heart out with envy of you. You got the position I wanted. Oh, I know you're better qualified than I am, but there it was. And you're pretty. At least you make people believe you're pretty. My earliest recollection is of someone saying, "What an ugly child." You come into a room delightfully. Oh, I remember how you came into school that first morning. But I think the real reason I've hated you so is that you always seem to have some secret delight, as if every day of life was an adventure. In spite of my hatred, there are times when I acknowledge to myself that you might just have come from some far-off star. Really, Catherine? You take my breath with all these compliments. But you don't hate me any longer, do you? We can be friends now. I don't know. I've never had a friend of any kind, much less one of anything like my own age. I don't belong anywhere. I never have belonged. I don't think I know how to be a friend. No, I don't hate you any longer. I don't know how I feel about you. Oh, I suppose it's your noted charm beginning to work on me. I only know that I feel like I have to tell you what my life has been like. I could never have told you if you hadn't told me about your life before you came to Green Gables. I want you to understand what has made me as I am. I don't know why I should want you to understand, but I do. Well, tell me, Catherine dear. I do want to understand you. You do know what it's like not to be wanted, I admit, but not what it's like to know that your father and mother don't want you. Mine didn't. They hated me from the moment I was born and before, and they hated each other. Yes, they did. They quarreled continually, just mean, nagging, petty quarrels. My childhood was a nightmare. They died when I was 7, and I went to live with Uncle Henry's family. They didn't want me either. They all looked down on me because I was living on their charity. I remember all the snubs I got, every single one. I can't remember a single kind word. I had to wear my cousin's cast-off clothes. I remember one hat in particular. It made me look like a mushroom. And they made fun of me whenever I put it on. One day I tore it off and threw it on the fire, and I had to wear the most awful old tam to church all the rest of winter. I never even had a dog, and I wanted one so. I had some brains. I longed so for a BA course, but naturally I might just as well have yearned for the moon. However, Uncle Henry agreed to put me through Queen's if I would pay him back when I got a school. He paid my board in a miserable third-rate boarding house where I had a room over the kitchen that was ice cold in winter and boiling hot in summer, and full of stale cooking smells in all seasons. And the clothes I had to wear to Queens? But I got my license and I got the second room in Summerside High, the only bit of luck I've ever had. Ever since then, I've been pinching and scrimping to pay Uncle Henry. Not only what he spent putting me through Queens, but what my board through all the years I've lived there cost him. I was determined that I would owe him not 1 cent. That is why I've boarded with Miss Dennis and dressed shabbily. And I've just finished paying him. For the first time in my life, I feel free. But meanwhile, I've developed the wrong way. I know I'm unsocial. I know I can never think of the right thing to say. I know it's my own fault that I've always neglected and overlooked at social functions. I know I've made being disagreeable into a fine art. I know I'm sarcastic. I know I'm regarded as a tyrant by my pupils. I know they hate me. Do you think it doesn't hurt me to know it? They always look afraid of me. I hate people who look as if they are afraid of me. Oh, Anne, hate has got to be a disease with me. But I do want to be liked by other people, and I never can now. That is what makes me so bitter. Oh, but you can. Anne put her arm around Catherine. You can put hate out of your mind. Cure yourself of it. Life is only beginning for you now. Since at last you're quite free and independent, and you never know what may be around the next bend in the road. I've heard you say that before, and I've laughed at your bend in the road. But the trouble is there aren't any bends in my road. I can see it stretching straight out before me to the skyline. Endless monotony. Oh, doesn't life ever frighten you, Anne? With its blankness, its swarms of cold, uninteresting people? No, of course it doesn't. You don't have to go on teaching all the rest of your life. And you seem to find everybody interesting, even that little round red being that you call Rebecca Dew. The truth is, I hate teaching, and there's nothing else I can do. A school teacher is simply a slave of time. Oh, I know you like it. I don't see how you can. And I want to travel. It's the one thing I've always longed for. I remember the one and only picture that hung on the wall of my attic room at Uncle Henry's. It was a faded old print that had been discarded from the other rooms with scorn. It was a picture of palms around a spring in the desert, with a string of camels marching away in the distance. It literally fascinated me. I've always wanted to go and find it. I want to see the Southern Cross and the Taj Mahal and the Pillars of Karnak. I want to know, not just believe, that the world is round, and I can never do it on a teacher's salary. I'll just have to go on forever, prating of King Henry VIII's wives and the inexhaustible resources of the Dominion. Anne laughed. It was safe to laugh now, for the bitterness had gone out of Catherine's voice. It sounded merely rueful and impatient. Anyhow, we're going to be friends, and we're going to have a jolly 10 days here to begin our friendship. I've always wanted to be friends with you. Catherine, spelled with a K. I've always felt that underneath all your prickles was something that would make you worthwhile as a friend. So that is what you've really thought of me? I've often wondered. Well, the leopard will have a go at changing its spots if it's at all possible. Perhaps it is. I can believe almost anything at this Green Gables of yours. It's the first place I've ever been in that felt like a home. I should like to be more like other people, if it's not too late. I'll even practice a sunny smile for that Gilbert of yours when he arrives tomorrow night. Of course, I've forgotten how to talk to young men, if I ever knew. He'll just think me an old maid gooseberry. I wonder if, when I go to bed tonight, I'll feel furious with myself for pulling off my mask and letting you see into my shivering soul like this. No, you won't. You'll think, I'm glad she's found out I'm human. We're going to snuggle down among the warm, fluffy blankets, probably with 2 hot water bottles, for likely Marilla and Miss Lynn will each put one in for us for fear they had forgotten. And you'll feel deliciously sleepy after this walk in the frosty moonshine, and the first thing you'll know, it will be morning, and you will feel as if you were the first person to discover the sky is blue. And you'll grow learned in lore of plum puddings because you're going to help me make one for Tuesday, a great big plummy one. Anne was amazed at Catherine's good looks when they went in. Her complexion was radiant after her long walk in the keen air, and color made all the difference in the world to her. Why, Catherine would be handsome if she wore the right kind of hats and dresses, reflected Anne, trying to imagine Catherine with a certain dark, richly red velvet hat she had seen in Summerside's shop on her black hair and pulled over her amber eyes. I've simply got to see what can be done about it. All right, chapter 6. Saturday and Monday were full of gay doings at Green Gables. The plum pudding was concocted and the Christmas tree brought home. Catherine and Anne and Davy and Dora went to the woods for it, a beautiful little fir to whose cutting down Anne was only reconciled by the fact that it was in a little clearing of Mr. Harrison's, which was going to be stumped and plowed in the spring anyhow. They wandered about gathering creepy spruce and ground pine for wreaths, even some ferns that kept green in a certain deep hollow of the woods all winter, until day smiled back at night over white-bosomed hills, and they came back to Green Gables in triumph to meet a tall young man with hazel eyes and the beginnings of a mustache, which made him look so much older and maturer than Anne. That Anne had one awful moment of wondering if it really was Gilbert or a stranger. Catherine, with a little smile that tried to be sarcastic but couldn't quite succeed, then left them in the parlor and played games with the twins in the kitchen all the evening. To her amazement, she found she was enjoying it. And what fun it was to go down to the cellar with Davy and find that there were really such things as sweet apples still left in the world. Catherine had never been in a country cellar before and had no idea what a delightful, spooky, shadowy place it could be by candlelight. Life already seemed warmer. For the first time, it came home to Catherine that life may be beautiful, even for her. Davy made enough noise to wake the 7 sleepers at an unearthly hour Christmas morning, ringing an old cowbell up and down the stairs. Marilla was horrified at his doing such a thing when there was guest in the house, but Catherine came down laughing. Somehow, an odd camaraderie had sprung up between her and Davy. She told Anne candidly that she had no use for the impeccable Dora, but that Davy was somehow tarred with her own brush. They opened the parlor and distributed the gifts before breakfast because the twins, even Dora, couldn't have eaten anything if they hadn't. Catherine, who had not expected anything except perhaps a dusty gift from Anne, found herself getting presents from everyone. A gay crocheted afghan from Miss Lynn, a sachet of orris root from Dora, a paper knife from Davy, a basket full of tiny jars of jam and jelly from Marilla, and even a little bronze chessy cat for a paperweight from Gilbert. And tied under the tree, curled up on a bit of warm and woolly blanket, a dear little brown-eyed puppy with alert silken ears and an ingratiating tail. A card tied to its neck bore the legend, "From Anne, who dares after all to wish you a Merry Christmas." Catherine gathered his wiggling little body up in her arms and spoke shakily. "Anne, he's a darling. But Miss Dennis won't let me keep him. I asked her if I might get a dog, and she refused. I've arranged it all with Miss Dennis. You'll find she won't object. And anyway, Catherine, you're not going to be there long. You must find a decent place to live. Now that you've paid off what you thought were your obligations. Look at that lovely box of stationery Diana sent me. Isn't it fascinating to look at the blank pages and wonder what will be written on them? Miss Lynn was thankful it was a white Christmas. There would be no fat graveyards when Christmas was white. But to Catherine, it seemed a purple and crimson and golden Christmas. And the week that followed was just as beautiful. Catherine had often wondered bitterly just what it would be like to be happy, and now she found out. She bloomed out in the most astonishing way. Anne found herself enjoying their companionship. To think I was afraid she would spoil my Christmas holiday, she reflected in amazement. To think, said Catherine to herself, that I was on the verge of refusing to come here when Anne invited me. They went for long walks through Lover's Lane and the haunted wood where the very silence seemed friendly, over hills where the light snow whirled in a winter dance of goblins, through old orchards full of violet shadows, through the glory of sunset woods. There were no birds to chirp or sing, no brooks to gurgle, no squirrels to gossip, but the wind made occasional music that had in quality what it lacked in quantity. One can always find something lovely to look at or listen to, said Anne. They talked of cabbages and kings and hitched their wagons to stars and came home with appetites that taxed even the Green Gables pantry. One day it stormed and they couldn't go out. The east wind was beating around the eaves and the gray gulf was roaring. But even a storm at Green Gables had charms of its own. It was cozy to sit by the stove and dreamily watch the firelight flickering over the ceiling while you munched on apples and candy. How jolly supper was with a storm welling outside. One night Gilbert took them to see Diana and her new baby daughter. I never held a baby in my life before, said Catherine, as they drove home. For one thing, I didn't want to, and for another, I've been afraid of it going into pieces in my grasp. You can't imagine how I felt. So big and clumsy with that tiny, exquisite thing in my arms. I know Mrs. Wright thought I was going to drop it every minute. I could see her striving heroically to conceal her terror. But it did something to me. The baby, I mean. I haven't decided just what. Babies are such fascinating creatures, said Anne dreamily. They are what I heard somebody at Redmond call terrific bundles of potentiality. Think of it, Catherine. Homer must have been like a baby once, a baby with dimples and great eyes full of light. He couldn't have been blind then, of course. What a pity his mother didn't know he was to be Homer, said Catherine. But I think I'm glad Judas's mother didn't know he was to be Judas, said Anne softly. I hope she never did know. There was a concert in the hall one night with a party at Abner Sloane's after, and Anne persuaded Catherine to go to both. I want you to give us a reading for our program, Catherine. I heard you read beautifully. I used to recite. I think I'd rather like doing it. But the summer before last, I recited at a shore concert with the party of summer resorters got up, and I heard them laughing at me afterwards. How do you know they were laughing at you? They must have been. There wasn't anything else to laugh at. Anne hid a smile and persisted in asking for the reading. Give Ginevra for an encore. I'm told you do that splendidly. Miss Stephen Pringle told me she never slept a wink the night after she heard you give it. No, I've never liked Ginevra. It isn't the reading, so I try occasionally to show the class how to read it. I really have no patience with Ginevra. Why didn't she scream when she found herself locked in? When they were hunting everywhere for her, surely somebody would have heard her. Catherine finally promised the reading, but was dubious about the party. I'll go, of course, but nobody will ask me to dance, and I'll feel sarcastic and prejudiced and ashamed. I'm always miserable at parties. The few I've ever gone to, nobody seemed to think I can dance. And you know I can fairly well, Anne. I picked it up at Uncle Henry's because a poor bit of a maid that had wanted to learn too, and she and I used to dance together in the kitchen at night to the music that went on in the parlor. I think I'd like it, with the right kind of partner. You won't be miserable at this party, Catherine. You won't be outside looking in. That's all the difference in the world, you know, between being inside looking out and outside looking in. You have such lovely hair, Catherine. Do you mind if I try a new way of doing it? Catherine shrugged. Oh, go ahead. I suppose my hair doesn't look dreadful, but I've no time to be always primping. I haven't a party dress. Will my green taffeta do? It will have to do, though green is the one color above all others that you should never wear, my Catherine. But you're going to wear a red pin tucked chiffon collar I've made for you. Yes, you are. You ought to have a red dress, Catherine. I've always hated red. When I went to live with Uncle Henry, Aunt Gertrude always made me wear aprons of bright turkey red. The other children in the school used to call out fire when I came in with one of those aprons on. Anyway, I can't be bothered with clothes. Heaven grant me patience. Clothes are very important, said Anne severely, as she braided and coiled. Then she looked at her work and saw that it was good, and she put her arm around Catherine's shoulders and turned her to the mirror. Don't you truly think we are a pair of quite good-looking girls? She laughed. And isn't it really nice to think people will find some pleasure in looking at us? There are so many homely people who would actually look quite attractive if they took a little pains with themselves. 3 Sundays ago in church, you remember the day poor old Mr. Milvin preached and had such a terrible cold in his head that nobody could make out what he was saying? Well, I passed the time making the people around me beautiful. I gave Mrs. Brent a new nose. I waved Mary Addison's hair and gave Jane Martin's a lemon rinse. I dressed Emma Dill in blue instead of brown. I dressed Charlotte Blair in stripes instead of checks. And I removed several moles, and I shaved off Thomas Anderson's long, sandy Piccadilly weepers. You couldn't have known them when I got through with them, and except perhaps for Mrs. Brent's nose, they could have done everything I did themselves. Why, Catherine, your eyes are just the color of tea, amber tea. Now live up to your name this evening. A brook should be sparkling, limpid, merry. Everything I'm not? Everything you've been this past week, so you can be it. That's only the magic of Green Gables. When I go back to Summerside, 12 o'clock will have struck for Cinderella. You'll take the magic back with you. Look at yourself, looking for once as you ought to look all the time. Catherine gazed at her reflection in the mirror as if rather doubting her identity. I do look years younger, she admitted. You were right. Clothes do things to you. Oh, I know I've been looking older than my age, and I didn't care. Why should I? Nobody else cared. And I'm not like you, Anne. Apparently you were born knowing how to live, and I don't know anything about it, not even the ABC. I wonder if it's too late to learn. I have been sarcastic for so long. I don't know if I can be anything else. Sarcasm seems to me to be the only way I could make my impression on people. And it seems to me, too, that I've always been afraid when I was in the company of other people, afraid of saying something stupid, afraid of being laughed at. Catherine Brooke, look at yourself in that mirror. Carry that picture of yourself with you. Magnificent hair framing your face instead of trying to pull it backward. Eyes sparkling like dark stars. A little flush of excitement on your cheeks. And you won't feel afraid. Now come now. We're going to be late, but fortunately, all the performers have what I heard Dora referring to as preserved seats. Gilbert drove them to the hall. How the old times it was, only Catherine was with her in place of Diana. Anne sighed. Diana had so many other interests now. No more running around to concerts and parties for her. But what an evening it was! What silvery satin roads with a pale green sky in the west after a light snowfall. Orion was treading his stately march across the heavens, and hills and fields and woods lay around them in a pearly silence. Catherine's reading captured her audience from the first line, and at the party she could not find dances for all her would-be partners. She suddenly found herself laughing without bitterness. Then home to Green Gables, warming their toes at the sitting room fire by the light of 2 friendly candles on the mantel, and Mrs. Lynde tiptoeing into their room, late as it was, to ask them if they'd like another blanket and assure Catherine that her little dog was snug and warm in a basket behind the kitchen stove. I've got a new outlook on life, thought Catherine, as she drifted off to slumber. I didn't know there were people like this. Come again, said Marilla when she left. Marilla never said that to anyone, unless she meant it. Of course she's coming again, said Anne, for weekends and for weeks in the summer. We'll build bonfires and hoe in the garden and pick apples and go for the cows and row on the pond and get lost in the woods. I want to show you little Hester Gray's garden, Catherine, and Echo Lodge and Violet Vale, where it is full of violets. Well, that ends our storybook adventure for today. I hope you enjoyed that, and I look forward to seeing you next Sunday for our next storybook adventure. Well, be joyful, be the joy in everything you do, and I will see you next Sunday. Nugs and joy. Mwah. Love you. Bye.